Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to Unacademy's Current Affairs Navigator, or also as we call it, UCAN. This is a special initiative by Unacademy IAS English to help you prepare for current affairs, which is such a crucial part of the civil services examination. Current affairs plays a critical role in your prelims and as well as in your mains, and of course in the personality test round as well. So current affairs is omnipresent in this exam. If you look at any question paper from the previous years, most question papers are dominated by current affairs based questions. Even static questions would be inspired by current events. And this is where we have seen that many students, they find it difficult to cover current affairs comprehensively. Because there are so many developments across different subjects, they find it difficult to cover them regularly. And also there are so many different sources they have to cover from, the Hindu, the Indian Express, various magazines. So this is where students have been facing challenges, and to address this problem, to provide a one-stop solution to all your current affairs problems, we launched the UCAN initiative, Unacademy's Current Affairs Navigator. This ensures that every aspirant will be able to master current affairs. So under this program, which runs every Tuesday to Friday from 9:30 to 11:30 p.m., our subject experts will cover the current developments from their respective subjects. If you look at other institutions, they often have a separate current affairs teacher who provides a very superficial understanding of current affairs. But we don't agree with that approach. We believe that current affairs also requires conceptual depth. So the respective subject faculties will teach you current affairs under this program. So this is the first session for the month of October, and let's start the discussion. But before that, if you guys are interested to enroll for the program, if you want to take just the current affairs course separately, you can subscribe to the program by clicking on the link provided in the video description below. In the video description below, you can see the link which will allow you to enroll for this program. This is a year-long program which keeps running, and every Tuesday to Friday. So in a month, you get 15 classes covering current affairs from multiple sources with practice questions. So with this, I would like to start the first session. And before we begin, if you guys are benefiting from our initiatives, if you're liking our free initiatives on YouTube, then do support us with your likes and comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel, because that is what keeps us motivated to keep doing better for the well-being of our students. So do let us know what you think of the initiatives. And with this, let's start the discussion by looking at the topics. So today's UCAN session focuses on current affairs from international relations and internal security. We have seen the recent question papers of 2024, be it prelims or mains. Almost every question that came from IR and internal security were based on current events. That tells you how important current affairs will be for your exams. In fact, UPSC has surprised us as well by asking internal security questions in prelims, which were based on current events. So today, let's make an attempt to cover all the important current developments from international relations and internal security that have occurred in September and in the last few days of October. So I have chosen 8 important topics. There are 5 topics which require a detailed explanation. They are important not only for your mains, there are certain points which are relevant for prelims as well. So let's cover these topics comprehensively, and at the end, we will look at some small topics which were in the news, which can be important only for the prelims exam. So let's begin the discussion by looking at the first topic. I have chosen this topic from the Frontline magazine. Many of you may not find the time to cover different magazines. You might be restricted only to one newspaper like Hindu or Indian Express. So this is an attempt to cover current affairs from different sources, as I mentioned. So this topic was widely covered in the latest edition of Frontline, and the spotlight, the focus was on India-Pakistan relations. So we need to understand, where does India-Pakistan relations stand as of today? Because recently there have been some developments regarding the Indus water treaty. This topic was in news, and Pakistan has also received another bailout from the IMF, which was recently reported in news. So because of these two developments, I have taken up this topic from Frontline, which gives a holistic view of India-Pakistan relations, including the latest developments. So before I start, I would like to remind you that I will be giving some practice questions in between. And I want all of you to participate. I want you guys to attempt the question, and I will take some doubts as well after each topic wherever it is feasible. So let's get an overview of India-Pakistan relations over the last decade. Because in order to understand the current state of relations, we need to look at what has happened in the recent past. In 2014, when Prime Minister Modi came to power, the Modi government started out a new outreach to Pakistan. Maybe Prime Minister Modi was drawing a lesson from the previous prime ministers like Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Manmohan Singh, who also started out their fresh terms by reaching out to Pakistan in the interest of friendly relations. In that regard, Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee was a far-sighted visionary leader who realized that it's important to have friendly ties with our neighbors, especially with a problematic neighbor like Pakistan. This approach was continued by Manmohan Singh as well. And PM Modi, after coming to power, initiated a friendly outreach to then Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. When PM Modi was sworn in for the first time, he invited all the SAARC leaders to attend the swearing-in ceremony, which in itself was a very big diplomatic gesture. That is when India launched the neighborhood first policy, meaning India would give top priority to the neighboring countries, including Pakistan. Nawaz Sharif attended the event, and both the leaders, they hit it off instantly. From 2014 to 2015, for few months, India-Pakistan relations did improve under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif. We saw several positive developments. For example, PM Modi visited Pakistan as well in an informal visit. He attended a family event of Nawaz Sharif and held an interaction with Nawaz Sharif that spoke about the personal chemistry between the two leaders, which is crucial to drive the relations between the governments as well. Then, when they met in Russia during the BRICS and SEO summit at Ufa, India-Pakistan discussed all the pressing issues, including the issue of terrorism and Kashmir, and they issued a joint statement, which is popularly called the Ufa Joint Statement. This was a big development because in 2014, our relations had broken down completely after the 26/11 Mumbai attacks of 2008. After the deadly terrorist attack carried out by Lashkar-e-Toiba with the backing of Pakistani state agencies, India-Pak relations had never improved after that. This was the first big breakthrough after 2008. But as the relations were improving, as we have always seen with Pakistan, the improvement in relations is often broken by the deep state of Pakistan. We have seen this happening repeatedly under Prime Minister Vajpayee as well. When Vajpayee had reached out to Nawaz Sharif and improved the relations, immediately we saw that the relationship was disrupted with deliberately planned terror attacks to break the friendly relationship. This has always been the pattern of the deep state, which is the army and the ISI, the Pakistani army and its intelligence agency, the ISI. They have a vested interest in always maintaining tensions with India. This allows them to maintain their control over Pakistan's politics, over Pakistan's economy. This allows them to remain powerful and be the key decision makers. So they always seek out tensions with India to project India as their enemy number one, and they would never tolerate any friendly ties between the two civilian governments. Whenever relations improve slightly between the two governments, we see that the relations are disrupted with major attacks, which are planned with the intention of breaking the relationship. We saw this with Manmohan Singh and Pervez Musharraf as well. So the same pattern would repeat with Modi and Nawaz Sharif. After a slight improvement in the relationship, we saw regular attacks happening, and this time, defense installations were the target. Since Pakistan was under a lot of international pressure after 26/11 attacks to not use Lashkar-e-Toiba to attack Indian civilians and Indian cities, Pakistan adopted a change in strategy. It started focusing on military sites and defense installations, and we saw a series of attacks starting from 2015 onwards. The Gurdaspur army base camp was attacked. Pathankot air base, which is a forward air base, was attacked. And then came the Uri attacks of 2016, carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed. In fact, if you notice the overall trend and analyze the attacks that have happened against India, after the Mumbai attacks of 26/11, we haven't seen a major attack on an Indian city. Of course, there are small exceptions, but we haven't seen a major attack carried out by Lashkar-e-Toiba on Indian civilians. That's because India has maintained the pressure. We have got international support from United States and many other countries, which disallows Pakistan from targeting Indian cities again and from using Lashkar-e-Toiba on Indian civilians. So the new strategy that we have seen is to use Jaish-e-Mohammed to target defense installations instead, especially near the border areas. So these repeated attacks had tested India's patience. And after the Uri attacks, India was forced to retaliate by carrying out the surgical strikes. In a covert operation, the Indian Army Special Forces, the Para Commandos, they infiltrated across the LOC into POK and destroyed the terror launch pads where terrorists were waiting to infiltrate across into India. So this sent out a strong message from India, and obviously it affected the relationship and the tension started increasing. From here onwards, the relations never improved. In fact, India adopted a coercive diplomatic strategy as well. Apart from punishing Pakistan with the surgical strikes, where we used our hard military power, India engaged in coercive diplomacy to isolate Pakistan. Pakistan was supposed to host the SAARC summit right after the Uri attacks at Islamabad. India boycotted that SAARC summit, and all the other SAARC members stood with India, supported India. They blamed Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism and destabilizing the region, and along with India, they all boycotted the SAARC summit. So this became known as SAARC minus Pakistan strategy of India. We were trying to isolate and exclude Pakistan from South Asia. So parallelly, we reduced the importance given to SAARC and revived an old organization called BIMSTEC so that Pakistan could be isolated, as Pakistan is not a member of BIMSTEC. India revived this old dormant group called BIMSTEC, made it the most prominent regional group, and we have seen the decline of SAARC as a regional organization, which leaves South Asia without a platform for regional cooperation. Pakistan has constantly created trouble for India at SAARC as well. Whenever India would propose an initiative, Pakistan would derail them. For example, India had proposed a SAARC satellite. Pakistan unnecessarily created problems, and India had to exclude Pakistan and go ahead with the South Asia satellite instead of the SAARC satellite. Pakistan derailed the motor vehicles agreement, which would have improved connectivity and trade. Pakistan blocked the initiative, so we moved the initiative out of SAARC and launched BBIN in its place with Bangladesh, Nepal and Bhutan. So this is how regional ties also have been affected in South Asia because of Pakistan's regular hostility against India, because of the tensions in the India-Pakistan relationship. The only improvement we saw was probably when Imran Khan came to power. His party, Tehreek-e-Insaf, the PTI, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, rose to power on massive popular support, and for a brief period, there was some improvement in the relationship. But Imran Khan's proximity to the army, to the deep state, would keep on creating problems for India. For example, in 2019, we witnessed another major attack, the Pulwama attacks on a CRPF convoy. This was again carried out by Jaish-e-Mohammed. Almost 40 CRPF Jawans were martyred, and this led to a lot of public anger, brought a lot of pressure on the government as well. And again, India retaliated with the military option by carrying out the Balkot airstrikes, also known as Operation Bandar. Indian Air Force penetrated Pakistani airspace with the Mirage fighters for the first time after 1971 and carried out precision bombing at terror training camps of Jaish-e-Mohammed located at Balkot. So from here onwards, the tensions kept on increasing, and the only silver lining was the inauguration of the Kartarpur corridor. This was the only development, only positive development in the last 8 to 9 years. The Kartarpur corridor was a long-standing demand of the Sikh community to connect two sacred Gurudwaras that were divided by the boundary between India and Pakistan. When partition happened and Punjab province was bifurcated between India and Pakistan, it ended up dividing Kartarpur Sahib, a sacred Gurudwara in Sikhism, and Dera Baba Nanak in Gurdaspur district on the Indian side of Punjab. It is believed that Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, spent his last years in these Gurudwaras, and hence it is of great religious significance for Sikh pilgrims. But because of the hard border which came up after partition, the constant wars and tensions, Sikh pilgrims could never access Kartarpur, even though it was located barely 6 kilometers from the border. The Sikh community kept demanding for a transit corridor, a visa-free corridor, so they could visit Kartarpur and pay their respects. But given the state of our relations, this was never feasible. So even after Pulwama attacks, Prime Minister Modi and Imran Khan made it possible, because before Pulwama attacks, the agreement had been signed on Kartarpur corridor and a commitment had been made to launch the corridor before the 550th birth anniversary of Guru Nanak. So despite the tensions created by Pulwama attacks, Kartarpur corridor was inaugurated. Today it's a visa-free corridor, right, that connects Dera Baba Nanak in Gurdaspur in Punjab with Kartarpur Sahib on the other side in Pakistan. Apart from this slight improvement, the relations have taken a major hit, and especially in 2019, after India revoked the special status of Jammu and Kashmir and abrogated Article 370 and reorganized J&K into 2 union territories. After this move by India, Pakistan rejected the changes and it raised the issue at global platforms, including at United Nations and Organization of Islamic Cooperation. It accused India of changing the status quo over the Kashmir issue. But India rejected all these statements from Pakistan as interference in our internal matters. India said the changes were necessary to better integrate J&K with the Indian Union and to deal with the security situation and provide better development in J&K. So Pakistan downgraded the relations after India carried out these changes with regard to Article 370. In fact, after Pulwama attacks, India had already cut off most of the trade and people-to-people relations that we had. The cross-border trade was completely shut down by India. India revoked the MFN status, the most favored nation status we had given to Pakistan. We even went back on the connectivity projects. The bus and rail connectivity which we had been completely stopped, thus impacting the relationship. So India-Pakistan relations, they have gone through a lot of ups and downs, and primarily Pakistan is responsible for most of these tensions and challenges, especially the deep state. So since then, the relations have not really improved. After Pulwama attacks and after changes related to Article 370, our relations have taken a complete hit. We are at the lowest point, one of the lowest points in our relationship. That is why Frontline has brought out this article written by top experts. We have an article written by Vivek Kadju, a former Indian diplomat, an expert on Pakistan and Afghanistan, former ambassador as well to these countries, and he was one of the key negotiators during IC 814 hijacking. We have another article in the same magazine talking about regional cooperation, why India-Pakistan should bring back regional cooperation, bring back SAARC, which is essential to maintain stability in the region. This article is written by TCA Raghavan, another former Indian diplomat. That's why I feel these articles are very important. So now that you have the context, let's see what is the recent development, what has happened recently. A few weeks ago, a regular meeting was supposed to happen between India and Pakistan. Every year, under the Indus Water Treaty, the Indus Water Commission, which has been constituted, provides an opportunity for the commissioners of the Indus Water Commission to meet and exchange data and information about the Indus water and the sharing of the Indus waters. This treaty is a model treaty as far as transboundary rivers and water sharing is concerned. We have signed this treaty back in 1960 with the mediation of World Bank. Despite the Kashmir issue and the first India-Pakistan war and the tensions that prevailed, the then Nehru government went ahead and negotiated with Pakistan with the mediation of World Bank to sign the Indus Water Treaty to share the waters of the Indus. The Indus is a major transboundary river with multiple tributaries, and it's a lifeline for Pakistan and as well as for India, particularly northwest India. So sharing of these waters was a concern, especially for Pakistan, because if you look at the map, right, if you look at the geography and the flow of the Indus, you will realize that Pakistan is at a disadvantage, a natural geographical disadvantage, because Pakistan is a lower riparian located in the downstream. So India will have a natural advantage to control the flow of these waters as we are located in the upstream. We are a upper riparian state. So to address these insecurities of Pakistan, India showed a goodwill gesture. In the interest of improving our ties, we agreed for the talks and worked out the Indus Water Treaty. And since then, India has remained committed to the terms and provisions of the treaty. But however, Pakistan keeps creating trouble. It keeps creating problems for India, and it keeps poking at India with regard to projects over the Indus River. So whenever there are terror attacks against India, there is a debate that gets started in India. Should India quit the treaty? Especially after Uri and Pulwama attacks, there was a lot of debate within the media, within our strategic establishment, within the government as well, that should we reconsider the Indus Water Treaty, which largely seems to favor Pakistan? Should we use the treaty as a leverage to punish Pakistan for sponsoring terrorism? But subsequent governments have decided against it, because India has more to gain by upholding the commitments we have made under the treaty. It shows that we respect international law, right? This is a commitment we have made, and it also shows that we don't want to weaponize water. Water is a matter of life and death. We don't want to punish the common people in Pakistan. We have nothing against the people of Pakistan. Our problem is with the deep state of Pakistan, with the government of Pakistan. So subsequent governments have decided that it's better we continue our commitment to the Indus Water Treaty. But definitely the debate has taken place. In fact, we even had a parliamentary standing committee on water resources. This committee had recommended that India should revisit the treaty. If not quitting the treaty, we should revisit. We should call for a renegotiation and a updation of the treaty, because the 1960 treaty is outdated. It doesn't take into account the current challenges. Today, the world is affected by global warming and climate change. That obviously affects the water flow through the Indus rivers as well. Right? There are extreme weather events happening, leading to heavy rainfall, cloudbursts, and floods and landslides. We also see heat waves and droughts, which is another extreme weather event. So both India and Pakistan get affected by it, and India is of the opinion that we should revisit the treaty. The Parliamentary Standing Committee had recommended this in 2021. And recently, India brought up this recommendation, and India has asked for a review of the treaty. India said we will not continue with the regular meeting. Under the treaty, we have a commitment that every year the water commissioners of the Indus Water Commission, who are basically the water secretaries from the Water Resources Ministry, they meet regularly every year to exchange data and information and to coordinate. But this time India refused to continue with the meeting, and we have demanded that Pakistan should agree for a review of the treaty, keeping in mind the changes that are happening in our environment and climate. It seems to be a fair demand from Indian side, but Pakistan refuses to cooperate. Now this is where you should understand the provisions of Indus Water Treaty. How does it share the waters? It divides the Indus basin into western and eastern rivers. You can see here in the map, it divides the drainage basin into western and eastern rivers. Indus, Jhelum and Chenab become part of the western rivers. Ravi, Beas and Satluj become part of the eastern rivers. So Pakistan has been given greater control over the western rivers. A bigger share has been allocated to Pakistan. India can use the waters for some limited purposes like agriculture, irrigation, drinking, etc. for non-consumptive uses, but we can't divert those rivers. India cannot block or divert the flow of the western rivers. We should allow the waters to flow into Pakistan after using our limited share. However, India can construct run-of-the-river projects like hydropower plants. We can build a dam, store the water temporarily to create the hydropower potential to turn the turbines, generate electricity, but then we should allow the water to flow into Pakistan. These projects are allowed. So India has remained committed to this. We have never overused the waters of western rivers. We have never blocked or diverted these waters. We have remained fully committed and allowed the waters to flow freely into Pakistan, which benefits Pakistan. Coming to eastern rivers, India has full control. We almost have the highest allocation here, as Ravi, Beas and Satluj are the lifeline in Himachal Pradesh, Haryana, Punjab especially, right, in the agrarian states. So India has greater control over these rivers. We can use, even store and divert these waters, and only the rest of it is allowed to flow into Pakistan. So Pakistan gets a lower share of the eastern rivers. We have almost full control on the eastern rivers. So if you compare the two, allocation of India and allocation of Pakistan, it is Pakistan which largely stands to benefit. It is India which is showing a goodwill gesture by agreeing to these terms. Despite this, Pakistan has created problems for India. It has unnecessarily blamed India in the past for breaching the treaty. We had some major projects taken up on the Indus. These were hydropower projects. You might have heard about projects like the Kishan Ganga hydro project on the Kishan Ganga, which is a tributary of the Jhelum, or the Ratle hydro plant on the Chenab. These projects are crucial for hydropower generation to electrify Jammu and Kashmir. But Pakistan has raised unnecessary complaints, taken the matter to even Permanent Court of Arbitration to block these projects. So India has faced many such challenges where Pakistan has raised unnecessary issues even when India has been committed to the treaty. We had another project called Baglihar project. Pakistan dragged India to the court. It had filed a dispute at International Court of Justice and at Permanent Court of Arbitration. That case went in favor of India. It shows that India remains committed to the treaty and yet Pakistan has created trouble. And now India has one request: to review the treaty, to revisit the treaty, because there are some genuine concerns created by global warming, climate change, and the changing nature of these rivers. Pakistan has refused to agree for a upgradation of the treaty. See, under the treaty, there are three different mechanisms to resolve a dispute. If you look at the details of Indus Water Treaty, there are three levels of resolving a dispute. The first level is at the level of the Indus Water Commissioners, who head the Indus Water Commission, right? The water secretaries of both countries, they head the commission, they are the Indus Commissioners. As I said, they meet regularly every year, especially at the start of the year. So this is a place where disputes can be resolved. This is the first level of dispute resolution. Only if the dispute is not resolved here at the first level, then you can take it to the second level, where a neutral expert will be appointed by the World Bank. A neutral expert will be appointed by the World Bank. If this mechanism also fails, only then a case can be taken to the Permanent Court of Arbitration, which is a global arbitration body located at The Hague in Netherlands. But Pakistan, many times and even now, has bypassed the first two steps, directly gone to the PCA, which is a violation of the Indus Water Treaty. And recently, it has filed disputes not just at PCA, but even through the neutral expert appointed by the World Bank. Now, this is unacceptable to India. This is a breach of the commitments we have made. So, India's demand is very simple. We want to renegotiate. We want to take a review because the flow of the waters has changed. The climate itself is changing. It means the disasters will change. The water availability will change. So, India is absolutely right when it calls for a review and upgradation. And Pakistan is trying to block this. And it is targeting the hydro projects of India. So, it has filed a case at PCA as well, bypassing the initial two steps. It has filed a parallel case with a neutral expert appointed by World Bank. This is not allowed under the treaty. You can't have two parallel dispute resolution mechanisms. It's a step-by-step escalation which is provided under the treaty. Pakistan is violating this. So, to put a stop to the misuse of the treaty by Pakistan and to ensure that we leverage the treaty to favor India as well, India is right to call for a review and upgradation, which Pakistan doesn't agree to. So, this issue, if it continues and escalates, it could increase the tensions because, as you know, water is a very emotive subject. Pakistan already suffers from floods, sometimes droughts, and there are terror groups in Pakistan which blame this on India. Terror leaders like Hafiz Saeed of Lashkar-e-Toiba, even Masood Azhar of Jaish-e-Mohammed, they often blame India unnecessarily and they accuse India of water terrorism, that India is creating these floods and droughts. So, this would only add to the problem, right? If the tensions increase, if Pakistan doesn't agree for a review, if India leverages the treaty to get back at Pakistan, and since we don't have cordial relations at this moment, the tensions are bound to increase, which could create more challenges in the relationship. It could lead Pakistan to get aggressive, leading India to retaliate. And things might even go a little out of control as well, where the treaty might fall apart, where India might be pushed to quit the treaty. And this could contribute to more instability in the relationship, and this could affect the whole South Asia region, according to the writers. If we don't address the issue then and there, right, within the provisions and the mechanisms of the treaty, then there could be disastrous outcomes for India and even for Pakistan. So writers are cautioning against this, they're warning against this, because see, whether we like it or not, we can't change Pakistan as a neighbor, right? You need to accept and you need to learn to deal with it. Of course, we can't tolerate Pakistan's sponsorship of terrorism, the way it threatens our integrity and sovereignty. But when it comes to other issues, be it Indus Water Treaty or the trade related issues, India also needs to show a willingness to engage with Pakistan. The writers feel that we can't cut off ties entirely and stay aloof from Pakistan, right? You can't stay away from a neighbor, and that too a problematic neighbor like Pakistan. Pakistan does create problems, the deep state especially keeps targeting India with its hostility, but doesn't mean India should fall into the trap. We need to move beyond this and we need to have a stable relationship. At least we should be on talking terms, because don't forget, we are nuclear armed countries, rivals of each other, neighbors of each other, possessing nuclear weapons. It's very essential to maintain a constant line of communication, which will bring stability in the relationship. It could be good for India as well. We could push Pakistan to, address the issue of terrorism. And more importantly, it could be good for South Asia. Because look what's happening around our neighborhood. Almost in every neighboring country, there is chaos. Nepal, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Maldives as well. Our relations have taken a hit. Critics are pointing out that Modi government's foreign policy has failed. They are saying neighborhood first policy is a failure because we have not protected our interests in any of the neighboring countries except for Bhutan. So this leads us to the argument of the writers that it's important to work with Pakistan whether we like it or not. We shouldn't take a back step on core issues like Kashmir and terrorism. At the same time, we can't stay away from other issues, be it Indus Water Treaty or trade or people-to-people relations. We need to engage, we need to work with Pakistan. This could be good for the regional dynamics as well, which could bring more stability across the region as well. So the writers are saying that we should focus on groupings like SAARC, which we neglected from 2016. Since we adopted the SAARC minus Pakistan strategy, we have sidelined Pakistan and even SAARC. We tried reviving BIMSTEC, but today BIMSTEC is facing its own hurdles and problems. Maybe in another session, we will discuss about the problems with BIMSTEC. India was pinning its hopes on BIMSTEC as a replacement for SAARC, but the strategy hasn't really worked out. So it is important to focus on SAARC, which is the only regional grouping of South Asia. If we have to build regional cooperation and bring stability across the region, there needs to be a decent, cordial relationship between India and Pakistan. These are the two leading powers of South Asia. Without a decent relationship between them and without a mechanism or a framework for regional cooperation, the whole region will suffer and it will take a setback. So that is what we learn from these articles. Now let's go a little beyond. There were other articles as well in Hindu and Indian Express which focused on Pakistan's internal issues, its political, economic and security problems, how it could affect India. So let's take a quick look at this and then we'll end this topic. Over the last few years, Pakistan is facing multiple internal problems. It is always affected by political turmoil. This is a given fact with regard to Pakistan's internal dynamics. Since 1947, the deep state has always cornered the decision-making powers. In fact, if you look at Pakistan's political structure, there is a dual authority. There is a dual control over power. You have an elected civilian government just for the sake of it. Pakistan calls itself a democracy, but trust me, it's a namesake democracy. The deep state, that is the army and ISI, largely control the politics, the elections, even the economy, foreign and security policy as well. The deep state is everywhere. Civilian government is just a puppet. So no civilian government or leader can survive without the backing of the deep state. This is a given fact. Since 1947 till date, this has been the case. Those who don't agree with the deep state, they either are killed or assassinated or banished from the country or they are jailed. That's what has happened with almost every Pakistani Prime Minister and President, right? So there's a historic precedent behind this. Now recently, Pakistan went through a major political turmoil. Imran Khan, who was seen as a blue-eyed boy of the deep state, who was so close to the army and ISI, eventually developed differences, especially over key appointments of army chief, appointment of the ISI DG. These top-level appointments, Imran Khan differed with the military establishment, leading to a break in their relationship. Also, Imran Khan's approach towards United States was a major factor. So the deep state, which lost the favor with Imran Khan and his party, ensured that he was toppled a few years ago. Despite being a popular leader with mass support, he was toppled in an unconstitutional, undemocratic manner. Elected government was brought down. Eventually, elections were held. And earlier this year, a new government was formed. But this year's election was a very big surprise for us. For those who watch Pakistan regularly, the election results were a big surprise. Imran Khan's party, which has been targeted by the deep state. Imran Khan himself was arrested eventually. Most of the leaders of PTI, Tehreek-e-Insaf, were in jail. Despite that, the Tehreek-e-Insaf leaders contested as independent candidates. If you look at the 2024 election results, it is the independent candidates who got the majority vote, not the other major parties like PMLN or PPP. These are dynastic politics of or parties of Pakistan. Pakistan Muslim League, the Nawaz Sharif faction, headed by Nawaz Sharif and his brother Shehbaz Sharif. The PPP, Pakistan People's Party, dominated by the Bhutto family, right? So these dynastic political parties, despite their strength, their popularity and historical control over power, they did not get majority votes. It was the independent candidates, most of whom were from Tehreek-e-Insaf. They were all followers of Imran Khan. So eventually, the deep state somehow managed to form a coalition government. It brought the two other parties together, Nawaz Sharif's party and the Bhutto's family's party together to form a coalition government, and a power sharing has been decided, which means the current government under Shehbaz Sharif enjoys the support of the army and the ISI. So politically, some stability has come back, but still the deep state controls the politics. That hasn't changed. Despite this surprising election results, where the people were clearly standing against the army and the ISI, they were trying to vote out the puppets of the deep state by favoring Imran Khan and his party leaders. Despite that, the army has managed to change the mandate of the people by forming a coalition government. So politically, some stability has come back, but the fact remains that the deep state is still in control. It still takes the big decisions, be it a political decision or an economic decision or even decisions related to foreign policy, security and its nuclear program. So this remains a matter of concern for us. It clearly tells us that the deep state is way too powerful. It's not going to shield or give up its power, and that is something that should concern India. Which means relations are unlikely to improve. Even if they improve, the deep state knows how to break the relationship through its covert proxy war. So this is something that will pose challenges for us, and this is something of concern given what's happening in our immediate and extended neighborhood. As I said, there is instability in all our neighboring countries. Beyond our neighborhood, you know what's happening in West Asia. We will study that in the next topic. So it's important to keep these factors in mind, because Pakistan is facing a serious security crisis as well. After decades of sponsoring terrorism, Pakistan itself has become a victim. A terror group called the Pakistan Taliban. It's the Pakistan faction of the Taliban, made up of the Pashtuns from the Af-Pak region along the Durand line, which is the international border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. You find the Pashtuns on both sides of the border, the native ethnic community. So Pashtuns primarily comprise the Afghan Taliban, the Afghan faction of Taliban, which currently is in power, which toppled the then Afghan government in 2021 and captured power in Afghanistan. Traditionally, we know that Afghan Taliban has been a puppet of Pakistan. Since 1970s, 1980s, it was Pakistan which cultivated the Afghan Mujahideen at the behest of United States, basically to target the Soviet forces which had occupied Afghanistan in 1979. Since then, the deep state, the ISI and the army worked with US and its allies, including Saudi Arabia, to sponsor the Afghan Mujahideen, made up of radical Pashtuns from the region, to create an insurgency against the Soviet forces, to wage a fundamentalist religious war against the Soviet forces. So since then, the Taliban, which is a byproduct of the Mujahideen, as Soviet forces retreated by 1989, the Mujahideen and other warlords were fighting for control, and that's when a radical group called Taliban was born. The younger student leaders, led by Mullah Omar, they formed Taliban as a more radical student-led outfit with political ambitions. So it eventually captured power as well in 1996, forming a Taliban regime, an Islamic emirate, imposing the Sharia, the rigid religious code, violating gender rights and religious minority rights. It has been involved in acts of terrorism by backing terror groups like Al-Qaeda, by supporting anti-India terror groups as well, like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Toiba and the others. So we have always seen Taliban, the Afghan Taliban, as a puppet of the deep state. We have seen that the Pakistani army ISI have used the Taliban to breed anti-India terror groups like Lashkar, Jaish and others. In fact, at one point, even the Khalistani outfits in the 80s, they were backed by using the same terror infrastructure Pakistan had created for the Mujahideen in 1980s. So there are clear links between what happens in Afghanistan and along the Af-Pak border and what happens in India, especially in Kashmir and in Punjab. So now Pakistan faces a very unique problem. Just like Afghan Taliban had a goal to topple the government and capture power to form an Islamic state, the Pak Taliban also has a similar goal. It wants to topple the Pakistani government itself. It wants to throw out the government and the army, the ISI, the deep state, capture power to turn Pakistan into an Islamic state. So TTP has been carrying out major attacks against Pakistan. Is that clear? So Pakistan faces a significant threat. And the concern here is that we can't afford a collapse of the Pakistani state. As much as India hates Pakistan, or hate might be a strong word, as much as we have concerns about Pakistan, right? No one would like to see Pakistan collapse. That would be an absolute nightmare for every country, especially for India. Because Pakistan is a state with nuclear weapons. At least now, there is some stability. It's controlled by the army and the deep state. If there is a collapse of the state because of the security, political and economic crisis which is going on, you might see a scenario where the nuclear weapons might fall in the wrong hands, meaning in the hands of the radicals, the terror groups. And guess who would they use it against? Obviously, India would be their prime target. So for India, a nightmare situation is a collapse of the Pakistani state. And today, the TTP is indeed posing a credible threat. In the last few years especially, it has mounted major attacks. For some time, Afghan Taliban had mediated between them. Because Afghan Taliban, Pak Taliban are connected. They are like brother organizations. Afghan Taliban had mediated between Pakistan and the TTP, and a ceasefire had been agreed between them after 2021. TTP had desisted from the attacks. But a couple of years ago, TTP broke the ceasefire and it has gone on a full rampage, carrying out major attacks against Pakistan. You might be reading in newspapers about repeated attacks happening in Pakistani cities against the Pakistani army. These are carried out primarily by the TTP. Now, Pakistan has issues with Afghan Taliban as well, because Pakistan retaliated against TTP by conducting attacks. It carried out cross-border attacks into Afghanistan on Afghan soil. It carried out military raids against the TTP, breaching the border and entering Afghan territory. Now, this is not liked by Afghan Taliban. It raises questions about Afghan Taliban's control over Afghanistan and the sovereignty of Afghanistan. So, differences have come up between Pakistan and Afghan Taliban itself right now. Pakistan also believes that maybe Afghan Taliban is enabling the TTP. So, these differences, even though they appear very good for India, lucrative for India, which India might possibly exploit, there are concerns that if these radical factions get stronger, mount major attacks on Pakistan, given its weak economy and its political crisis, there might be a worst case situation where the state might collapse. So this is something India should keep in mind, because the economic crisis is not going away for Pakistan. Over the decades, the deep state, which has controlled the economy as well, has mismanaged the economy. It has bred corruption, It has mismanaged the overall economy. While the army generals have enriched themselves, common people in Pakistan have suffered. Believe it or not, today the biggest enterprise in Pakistan is the Pakistani army itself. From producing basic food items, to constructing houses, to producing clothes and textiles, to soaps, everything is controlled by the Pakistani army. There are different army run organizations, right, which almost dominates the Pakistani economy. If other countries build private industries and startups, Pakistani army has created its own industry, its own enterprise. That shows the corrupt nexus that exists as well. So this mismanagement, gross corruption has affected the people today. There is a shortage of essential items. There is massive inflation. At one point, a few months ago, inflation crossed 35%, hitting 38%. It was almost getting towards runaway inflation. Its forex reserves depleted to just $3 billion, meaning Pakistan couldn't sustain imports anymore. So it was dealing with a massive liquidity crisis. It had borrowed heavily. The foreign debt had ballooned. It has borrowed from China, Saudi Arabia, UAE, the regular financiers, right? These are the traditional allies who have given a lot of financial support to Pakistan. So by borrowing heavy loans and by mismanaging the economy, it got into a situation where there was a liquidity crisis. Pakistan was in no position to repay the debt. There was a massive inflation, shortage of essential items, no electricity. Pakistan didn't have the money to run its power plants, to procure coal, to run the thermal power plants. So common people have suffered immensely because of the ongoing economic crisis. It was on the brink of complete economic collapse. That is why it is working with IMF to get a bailout package. In fact, there is no other country probably other than Pakistan which has received so many times support, liquidity support from the IMF. If I recollect correctly, Pakistan has gone to IMF at least 25 times over the last few decades. In last 2 years itself, it has received funds for the 6th time. So it's relying on external support. Of course, China and even Saudi Arabia and UAE, they have always stood with Pakistan, given some financial support. This time they have even restructured the loans. But getting support from IMF is always conditional. You need to fulfill certain conditions. This is what Sri Lanka went through a couple of years ago. Sri Lanka went through a very similar crisis, right? India also went through a crisis like this in 1991 when we faced the balance of payments crisis. Problem with IMF bailout is that you need to match their conditions. You should ensure that free market is allowed to flourish. You should not artificially control the foreign exchange rate. You can't artificially support your currency, right? And you can't go against reforms. You can't keep taxes low and keep giving subsidies without generating tax revenue. So such policies which go against free market is discouraged by the IMF. If IMF has to give the support, these conditions have to be met. First, the country has to restructure the pending loans. It has to work with the countries which have given the loans, with the creditors, restructure the loan and defer the repayment, reduce the interest rates, ensure that the economy can survive. Taxes have to be increased. The power rates and rates of essential items have to be brought up to market level so that revenue comes into the government, which can make the government stable. And Pakistan is accused of manipulating its currency against the foreign reserves, right? It's a known currency manipulator. So IMF doesn't allow this to happen. Only then Pakistan or any country facing a crisis can get support. So Pakistan has been forced to bring that discipline, that fiscal discipline, monetary discipline, introduce tax reforms, introduce pro-market reforms. But this will hurt the people again. With taxes going up and rates of essential items going up, especially power tariffs, it will affect the people of Pakistan and it might even instigate them against the government. So recently Pakistan has received a $7 billion bailout as part of the extended fund facility. So this is what is sustaining Pakistan's economy right now, along with donations from China, Saudi and UAE and Turkey as well. So it is still on the brink of an economic crisis. Now this accompanied with the political security crisis and the general instability in the region. It's always a possibility that Pakistan might even collapse. This is something that bothers India. That is something India should prepare for. So right now, Pakistan is working on its economy. As it is forced by the IMF, it has restructured the loans, it has introduced certain reforms, but there is no clarity whether Pakistan will come out of this crisis. At least in the case of Sri Lanka, we had India, Japan and others helping out the Sri Lankan economy. But that is not the case with Pakistan. Apart from some support from China, Saudi, UAE, it doesn't have anyone else to rely upon. And even these countries are losing patience. In fact, China has reduced its investments in the CPEC project under the Belt and Road Initiative. Even China realizes that this could be a failed investment. So China wants to cut its losses maybe. So given the situation, it's important to keep tracking, monitoring these developments, because eventually we will have to deal with the fallout, the impact. If the economy collapses, or if TTP and other rebel groups, the Baloch or Sindh groups, if they were to mount a united attack on the deep state, there could be a security and political collapse. The state could fall. So to avoid and prevent those extreme possibilities, also to maintain stability in the relationship, to provide stability across the region, it's essential for us to work with Pakistan, whether we like it or not. Of course, our core concerns with regard to Kashmir and terrorism, they have to be a priority. We have to push Pakistan to discuss these issues, especially state sponsorship of terrorism. At the same time, we should show willingness on other areas, right? We should create opportunities instead of creating more tensions. So that is what the writers are focused upon in these articles in the Frontline magazine. Now let's take up a practice question. Let's see how many of you can answer this. Very straightforward question. Kartarpur corridor between India and Pakistan has been built over which river? Let's see how many of you can answer this. In the meantime, I'll try to look at some questions as well. Udaya Siri is asking what is meant by deep state. Deep state is a hidden part of the government which is making all the big decisions. If you look at Pakistan, on the front you have a civilian government. For the world it appears that civilian government which is elected takes all the decisions. But in reality, civilian government is powerless. It's a puppet controlled by the deep state, a hidden part of the Pakistani state, which is nothing but the Pakistani army and the ISI. Some students are saying A, which is Indus. Some are saying B. Okay, let me give you the right answer. The correct answer is option B. It's built over the Ravi river. So please make a note of this. Now let's look at a mains practice question. With Pakistan reeling under a political, economic and security crisis, it's an imperative for India to work with Pakistan despite the tensions and friction in order to achieve regional stability. So use the points that I have provided and try to build a good answer for this question. I will try to help you out by discussing how you can build the answer, right? Maybe I can help you out with the structure and then you can try to write an answer to this question. So in the introduction, you can either talk about the current state of India-Pak relations, how relations have taken a hit in the recent years, or you can talk about Pakistan's current situation. Both would make for a good introduction. You can mention that Pakistan is facing a severe economic crisis accompanied with a security crisis and constant political turmoil, right? That sets the context for the answer. Or you can talk about our relations with Pakistan, how it has taken a hit because of repeated terror attacks, and currently this affects not just the two countries but the whole region as well. So after you set the context, in the body, provide some details about the crisis in the relationship, how the relations have been affected. You can break it down. You can break it down into the terror attacks, Indus Water Treaty related issues, Pakistan's interference in our internal matters, right? So break down the answer, mention these points where Pakistan is creating problems for India, how it has affected the relationship, how India also has taken a hardline position which doesn't create an opportunity for a cordial relationship. So once you present this argument and bring out all the details by discussing even the political, economic, security situation in Pakistan, then you can conclude your answer by suggesting that we should find a way out of this deadlock. We can't forever ignore Pakistan. We can't ignore a key neighboring country, that too a problematic neighbor. We should find a way so that we can engage with Pakistan. We should, of course, prioritize the issue of terrorism, ensure Pakistan doesn't meddle in Kashmir. These are core concerns of India. But other than that, we should use other opportunities, trade, economic relations, people-to-people relations. They need to resume at some point. We should ensure Indus Water Treaty is not weaponized, but our concerns which are genuine regarding a review should be addressed. So present a conclusion on these lines to end your answer. Point out that India-Pak relations is crucial for stability for two countries as well and for regional stability as well. So you can suggest that we should bring focus back on SAARC grouping, the only grouping where we can work in the region together to ensure that whole South Asia becomes more stable and economically integrated. So that would complete your answer. So let's see how many of you can try to write an answer to this question, and if you're writing an answer, do post that in the comment section. Now let's move on to the next article. Let's take a quick look at the crisis in West Asia. In previous UCAN sessions on the Unacademy app, I have already covered the topic several times. So I would just like to give an update regarding what has happened recently in the last few days and focus more on the impact of these developments. As you all know, Israel has escalated the war, right? The war has now moved beyond Gaza, extending to Lebanon, leading to direct clashes as well between Israel and Iran. See, ever since last year, since October 7, 2023, when Hamas carried out the deadly attack against Israel, Israel went to war in Gaza to decimate Hamas, to wipe out Hamas. So Hamas had killed 1,300 Israeli civilians in this deadly terrorist attack. Israel retaliated with brutal force. It has been accused of using disproportionate force as well, leading to a humanitarian situation in Gaza where more than 40,000 Palestinians have been killed. So this is not the end of the crisis with regard to the Gaza war. Iran, which is the regional rival of Israel, has been using its proxies. Hamas in itself was an Iranian proxy, funded and trained and armed by Iran. As a part of their regional rivalry, both Israel and Iran have a history of targeting each other. Iran uses these proxy terror groups to target Israel, and Israel has retaliated as well, both through covert and overt methods. So apart from Hamas, Iran has cultivated other proxies like Hezbollah, based out of Lebanon. You can see here in the map. And it has factions like Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq and Syria, all sponsored by Iran, and also the Houthis of Yemen. So after the Gaza war began, these proxies have been activated by Iran to target Israel and to show solidarity with Hamas and Palestinians. So Israel has been targeted by all these proxies of Iran over the last year. And Israel also has retaliated. It has almost weakened Hamas, taking out the top leadership as well. Recently, it killed the chief of Hamas, Ismail Haniyeh, when he was a guest in Iran. When he was on the soil of Iran in Tehran, Israel through a covert operation took out the chief of Hamas. It has weakened the leadership of Hamas, and it has allegedly committed war crimes, and using disproportionate force, it is alleged to have committed a genocide against Palestinians. This has destabilized the whole region, while the Houthis have disrupted the shipping channels by targeting the ships in Red Sea and Arabian Sea. Hezbollah has been targeting Israel from the northern borders, right? It led to displacement of 70,000 Israelis as Hezbollah kept firing rockets and missiles towards northern Israel. And Israel also has retaliated. So in this deadly conflict, which has engulfed West Asia, there are no saints, right? Each side is equally guilty of aggravating and escalating the conflict, and it's not a recent conflict. It's something that dates back all the way to the Israel-Palestine issue, to how the two-state plan was violated, to how Western countries, UK, US, pushed for the creation of Israel, supported the return of the Jews and formation of a country based on religion, and how Palestinian rights were eventually snatched away as well by violating the two-state plan. So on this sensitive issue, India has a very balanced position from the beginning. We have always maintained our ideological support to Palestine, the right of Palestinians to have their own country, as Israel declared unilateral independence, never allowing Palestine to be formed. At the same time, we don't support acts of extremism. Palestinians might fight for liberation, but that doesn't mean extremism or terrorism can be tolerated, and India doesn't support that. So we have maintained a balanced position on this while maintaining the relations with the Sunni and Shia powers. Right? We have built close ties with Israel in the recent years, along with good relations with the Sunni powers and the Shia powers as well. That's how India has balanced the region. But now this conflict threatens to affect India's diplomacy, threatens our interests in West Asia. Now what concerns us is that the last 2 weeks have been unprecedented. Israel has escalated the conflict. It announced that it is shifting focus towards Lebanon, away from Gaza. After weakening and almost decimating Gaza and weakening Hamas, Israel announced a new strategy in the ongoing war, stating that it will target Lebanon, meaning its target was Hezbollah. The primary goal was to return the Israeli civilians who have been displaced from here, from the northern parts where Hezbollah has fired rockets and missiles. 70,000 Israelis have been displaced, so Netanyahu's government has made this a priority, and as a result it announced a shift in strategy to target Hezbollah in Lebanon. As soon as this strategy was announced, we saw a series of attacks, both covert and overt. First was the pager and walkie-talkie explosions, an attack which was unheard of, unprecedented in its scale, where Israel had infiltrated into the supply chain, right, to manipulate the communication devices that Hezbollah fighters were using and remotely detonated them, that to thousands of them, leading to simultaneous explosions where many Hezbollah commanders and fighters were injured and some were killed as well. So this also dealt a psychological blow to Hezbollah, which is one of the most powerful non-state groups in the world, sponsored by Iran. Then within few days came the biggest blow. Israel started carrying out targeted airstrikes in southern Lebanon and even in Beirut, targeting senior Hezbollah commanders. And eventually it managed to eliminate the chief of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, a very revered, legendary figure as far as the Palestinian movement is concerned. Right? So Hassan Nasrallah is credited with building the organization and making Hezbollah a formidable force of resistance against Israel. But Israel and other Western countries, they look at Hezbollah as a terrorist organization. It is Iran which primarily sponsors Hezbollah. The supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, has been very close with Hassan Nasrallah, and from 1990s especially, he had built Hezbollah as a formidable militant political radical organization. It was formed in 1982 when Israel had invaded Lebanon, right? It was basically targeting the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, which had set up base in Lebanon in 60s and 70s as part of the Palestinian resistance movement. When Israel declared unilateral independence and annexed Palestinian territories illegally, it led to an exodus of Palestinians. Many of them took shelter in Lebanon. So those who started fighting against Israel for the independence of Palestine, some of them had formed a radical group called PLO, which was launching repeated attacks on Israel, quite similar to how Hezbollah has been launching attacks against Israel today. So Israel, back in 1979, launched a major attack in Lebanon targeting the PLO, and it dismantled the PLO. So this conflict, which kept continuing till 1982, it had instigated the Shia community in Lebanon, and that is how the Hezbollah was born. Because see, Lebanon has a very mixed ethnic diversity. There are Christians, Sunnis and Shias. Shias are in majority, Christians have been very powerful and influential, and even Sunnis have been relatively powerful. So the majority Shias have always felt left out and discriminated. The Christians especially, right, there were a few Christian militant organizations which would side with Israel and US and target the Palestinian outfits. So this is a very complex ethnic religious conflict. So Hezbollah emerged in this context. When Israel had invaded Lebanon, it was siding with the Christian community, US was backing the Christian militant organization. So that's when the Shias united with the Palestinians and formed the Hezbollah with Iranian support. By then in 1979, Iranian revolution had taken place. Iran, which was pro-West until then, under the then Shah of Iran, The regime was toppled by the revolution led by radical Shia clerics. Right? So Iran became a theocratic Shia power, a conservative state, and the Ayatollah, the Shia leader, would become the supreme leader. So Iran swore to wipe out Israel and declared support to Palestine. And it has created all these proxies. And Hezbollah was one of the first major proxies sponsored and backed by Iran, because the Ayatollah, the supreme leader of Iran, has been a very close friend of Hassan Nasrallah and the founding leader of Hezbollah. So throughout 80s, 90s, Hezbollah rose as a formidable outfit, entered the politics of Lebanon as well, and controlled the economy and society as well. It almost became like a parallel government in Lebanon. So Hassan Nasrallah was a widely revered figure, especially amongst the countries in the region, the Arab countries, those who support Palestinian resistance. They all saw Hassan Nasrallah as a resistance force, Hezbollah as a resistance against Israel. So now the killing of Hassan Nasrallah is a massive setback, especially for Iran. Iran has been weakened because its proxies have been almost decimated. The Houthis don't pose such a big threat to Israel or US. The Houthis are more of an irritant, targeting ships in Red Sea and Arabian Sea, firing missiles at Israel. But this is something that Israel and US can handle. But Hamas and Hezbollah were formidable outfits, and especially Hezbollah was the most powerful organization. For Israel, it has always been considered that Hezbollah is a bigger threat than Hamas, because Hezbollah has more number of fighters. It has better weapons given by Iran, from long-range missiles to rockets, anti-ship, anti-tank missiles. It's a very well-equipped organization. So Israel always wanted to hunt Hezbollah and take out the leader, Hassan Nasrallah, and the senior commanders. Now it has achieved this within a span of few days. That's why I said this is remarkable, unprecedented, but it pushes the region into deeper chaos. Because see, Iran has actually shown some restraint before. When the Gaza war started, right, when Israel was pounding Gaza and even when it was not sparing Palestinian civilians in the name of targeting Hamas, Iran largely showed restraint by only using the proxies. Iran never went into a direct attack against Israel. Many senior Iranian officers and intelligence operatives were killed in airstrikes and targeted covert attacks. Even then, Iran showed some restraint. But the repeated provocation has pushed Iran on the back foot. When Hamas chief was killed, Ismail Haniyeh, when he was a guest in Iran, even then Iran didn't retaliate. But of course, when Iranian officials had been killed a few months ago in Syria, Iran had fired few missiles, almost 300 missiles and drones in the month of April. But this was more of a show of force than a real intent to attack Israel. But after Hezbollah's chief was killed, and after Israel mounted targeted airstrikes and even reports of ground invasion came up, that Israel was invading Lebanon again, this time Iran did not hold back. It has launched a much more serious attack, fired almost 180 missiles, most of them ballistic missiles aimed at Israel. Most of them were intercepted by the legendary air defense systems of Israel, but some of them have hit the targets. So this marks a new provocation, a new escalation, and now Israel, it has promised retaliation, it has promised to take revenge. So as they say, eye for an eye makes the world blind, right? A quote attributed to Mahatma Gandhi. So if Iran, Israel continue on this path, where they keep targeting each other, escalating further, they will push the region into chaos. Not just the region, they'll push the whole world into chaos. We are getting to the brink of an unprecedented crisis, something which is unimaginable. Because if Israel were to hit Iran as promised, and we have already seen this happen today. Just few hours ago, I received reports that in Beirut, in densely populated areas in Beirut, in the capital of Lebanon, Israel has conducted strikes again. So civilians are getting killed in large numbers, humanitarian crisis is breaking out, and both sides are not backing off. Now there are reports that Israel might target the nuclear sites of Iran or the oil fields of Iran to send a strong message. Now if Israel were to do that, as it has been anticipated, there is a grave risk of escalation in this conflict. Because Iran may not be holding back. Israel under Netanyahu, under the influence of a far right-wing government, has decided to go all out in this war without showing any restraint or remorse. See, this is where India's balanced position becomes important. On October 7th, we supported Israel's right to act against terrorism. But doesn't mean India supports mindless violence and mindless provocation. That's why India has put pressure on Israel as well sometimes to hold back, to be mindful of the civilian casualties. Right? So India has urged for talks and peace, but it doesn't look like the two sides are going to talk or engage with each other. Now the big risk is that over the last year, the tensions have already spread across the region. The war is no longer limited just to Gaza, or it has not just extended to Lebanon. The war has already expanded, if you notice the developments of last year. From Red Sea to the Arabian Sea, where the Houthis have carried out attacks. Israel has retaliated as well. It has conducted strikes on important ports in Yemen, like the Hodeidah port, which is crucial for the Houthis that they control. Then clashes have occurred between Iran and Pakistan, which is related to this conflict. In the Baloch region, both Iran and Pakistan exchanged missiles against each other a few months ago. Right? Israel and Iran have exchanged direct fire. Iran has fired hundreds of missiles as a retaliation for Israel killing Iranian officers and intelligence operatives. So the region has already spread across the region, and any further escalation could be deadly. It might reach the doorsteps of India. Right? This could drag the global powers, especially United States. Many experts are predicting that what we are seeing right now is not just a posturing. They're not just sending symbolic messages, both Iran and Israel. They're actually showing the intent to go all the way to attack each other. If you look at the pattern in which Iran attacked this time, it is very different. A clear intent to hit military targets. And if Israel retaliates, as experts are predicting, against nuclear sites of Iran, which is a red line for Iran, or even the oil fields of Iran, these are strategic sovereign assets. No government will take it, and Iran will most definitely retaliate, escalating into a bigger war. Now, if you look at United States here, in West Asia, it has a major military presence, especially since last 1 year after the Gaza war started. The US has brought a lot of military forces. It has naval task force deployed in Red Sea, in the Arabian, in the Persian Gulf, in the Mediterranean as well. It has multiple military bases, sufficient troops and missiles. And the US will always stand with Israel to defend Israel. In fact, US has been funding and even arming Israel. Even though US is urging for talks and ceasefire, it doesn't have leverage on Israel. Israel is unlikely to listen to the United States. If Iran and Israel get locked in a direct conflict, it will drag US into the war. And just few hours ago, we have again received reports Israel has already conducted an escalation again in Syria by attacking a Russian base, which is again a red line, which might drag Russia deeper into this conflict. As you know, Russia is a close ally of the Shia powers of Iran and Syria. Russia has key military bases in Syria, which gives Russia access to the Mediterranean Sea. Russia has used the military bases in Syria to target ISIS, Islamic State. So Russia will not take these attacks coming from Israel. Given the links Russia-Iran have, it could very well drag Russia into the conflict, and US could be dragged as well, leading to a much bigger escalation, which could possibly turn into a global conflict. So that is the nightmare that most experts are worried about. And obviously, India has a lot of concerns regarding this. From our energy supplies through Hormuz Strait and through Red Sea, to the well-being of our diaspora. We have a very big Indian community here. 10 million Indians residing and working in these West Asian countries. Their safety, well-being will be under threat. Our energy supplies could be hit. The global economy, which is already on a shaky ground since the pandemic and since Russia-Ukraine war, could be further disrupted with the rise in oil prices. Just look at what has happened in the stock markets yesterday and today. It's been a bloodbath. If you guys have built any portfolio, right, through investments in the stock market, just look at the losses your portfolio is showing yesterday and today. That itself is an indicator regarding where things are headed. So if these countries don't hold back and de-escalate, things could get very dangerous. So that is what India is looking for. India wants to ensure that the war ends, the tensions are stabilized, and for that talks have to take place. Iran needs to take a step back. Israel, in the first place, has to take a step back. Right? Israel has a right to defend against terrorism, but not escalate and lead to a global or a regional conflict where there is a massive humanitarian tragedy that's being created. So both sides have to be pushed back, and this requires global pressure. It shows the failure of United Nations as well, how useless or ineffective UN is in preventing such conflicts and escalations. US and Russia need to be more mature, more responsible. China as well needs to play a more positive role. So global powers will determine the future course. It has already turned into a regional war. Now, it's only a matter of time before it could escalate further. And to prevent that, global powers have to act. They have to put pressure on Israel to push Israel back. Ensure Iran also doesn't retaliate and take a step back. The proxy wars have to end. The war in Gaza will have to end. A ceasefire has to come in on humanitarian grounds. So let's see what happens. It's a developing story. We'll continue to track this in the coming sessions. Now take up this question. Which of the following air defense systems are in the news in the context of Israel? Iron Dome, Triumph, David Sling, Arrow system. Let's see how many of you can answer this question. In the meantime, I'll take up a couple of questions from the chat box. Student is asking what kind of essay question can we expect from the current international crisis? You can get a question on the crisis in West Asia, right? How it affects the global economy, how it affects India, or a question on the humanitarian suffering created by wars, a philosophical, ethical essay regarding ethics in warfare, right? Regarding war crimes. That is a very possible topic which can come in your essay. Okay, some are saying B and C, some are saying A. Again, the answers are divided. Okay, let me give you the right answer. Iron Dome, David Sling and Arrow system. These three are correct. 1, 3 and 4. Option C is the correct answer. Triumph is also known as S-400. This is a Russian air defense system. Is that clear? Whereas Iron Dome, David Sling and Arrow, these are Israeli air defense systems. So Iron Dome is very popular. I'm sure many of you would have heard about it. In fact, this leads to a very limited understanding because see, Iron Dome is so popular both on social media and also in our regular media outlets. Whenever they say Israeli air defense, they just say it is Iron Dome. But that's not the case. Iron Dome is actually a very limited system. It's meant for short range rockets. The rudimentary rockets that Hamas fires, right, or Hezbollah fires, only such short range rockets in a short distance with a shorter altitude, only those rockets can be intercepted by Iron Dome, right? It's a fully automated air defense system that can track the projectiles, the incoming hostile projectiles and launch interceptors to intercept them mid-air. Other than Iron Dome, there are two other formidable systems, David Sling and Arrow. David Sling is meant for medium range ballistic and cruise missiles. Arrow is meant for long range ballistic missiles. So their range increases, as you can see in this picture over here. They can carry out interception at higher altitudes, meaning they can intercept even ballistic and cruise missiles. Arrow can even intercept ballistic missiles in outer space because ballistic missiles take a parabolic path. They move out of the Earth's atmosphere, briefly travel in space and re-enter back into atmosphere. So Arrow system is what intercepts the long range ballistic missiles of Iran. David Sling primarily intercepts the cruise and ballistic missiles fired by Hezbollah, right? And Iron Dome, primarily the rudimentary rockets fired at a short distance from Hamas. So all three systems work together depending on the incoming threat. So this is the formidable air defense that Israel has created for itself. Now let's look at a mains question. Evaluate the implications of covert and overt wars between Israel and Iran in the West Asia region as well as on Indian interests. Basically, the question is asking how do the overt and covert wars between these regional rivals, how does it affect West Asia, how does it affect Indian interests? So this is something I've clearly explained and I'm sure you can write a good answer to this question. Now let's move on to another important topic, this time again from our neighborhood, Sri Lanka. Recently, Sri Lanka went through presidential elections. A new president has been elected, so we should quickly understand what are the implications for India. So the election results were announced and the leader of a party known as JVP, which is a far left Marxist party aligned with left wing ideology. A very controversial party as well. Its past, especially its history, is very, very controversial, which I am going to explain very soon. The leader of this party, Anura Dissanayake, has emerged victorious in the recent presidential elections. So what does this mean for India? How should India read these elections? Because when elections happen in important countries, one important objective of our foreign policy, right, the Ministry of External Affairs, is to correctly read the ground level situation. What's the support a party has? Whether a government has popular public support. How do we engage with different parties? How do we protect our interests? Generally, India has put all its eggs in one basket. If you look at our neighboring countries especially, one of the biggest failure of our foreign policy across the last few decades is that we rely on one party or one leader to protect our interests. Be it Nepal, be it Bangladesh, be it Maldives or Sri Lanka. In most countries, we have a very short-sighted foreign policy. It's not just my opinion, many experts also believe that we end up favoring certain parties and certain leaders. We will not have any relations or engagement with other parties and leaders whom we perceive to be against our interests or whom we perceive to be against our ideas and ideologies and principles. So in foreign policy, you can't have such a limited vision, right? Eventually, if people elect a government, whether you like them or not, whether you like their ideology or not, whether you like their leaders or not, doesn't matter. You should learn how to deal with them, right? That is generally what pragmatic foreign policy should be about. Now, I would like to quote the example of Bangladesh here before we proceed further. See what happened in Bangladesh. We put all our eggs in one basket. We relied on Awami League, Sheikh Hasina, as that was the only pro-India party and she was the only pro-India leader. While this is good for India when Sheikh Hasina was in power, see what happens when things turn around. We have seen this happen previously as well, in 70s, 80s, when military rule was brought in, right? And when pro-Pakistan governments came in under opposition parties like BNP, right? We saw the rise of hardline Islamist tendencies. We saw pro-Pakistan initiatives targeting Indian interests. So this time again, despite having learned this lesson, we didn't really focus on building ties with the other side. For last 14 years, we relied on Sheikh Hasina and her party Awami League, building good relations with the government. But we never saw the ground reality. On the ground, Sheikh Hasina was becoming an unpopular leader. The signs were very clear. Day by day, she was seen as an authoritarian leader, crushing protests. She was seen as a dictatorial, authoritarian leader. We should have read the signs on the ground and reached out to the other side, reached out to BNP, the Jamaat, and other parties which can play a crucial role. Just because we don't like BNP and Jamaat because of their alignment with radical ideology and their pro-Pakistan approach, we have stayed away from these other political stakeholders, and eventually when the protest erupted, right, India did not read the situation correctly. We ended up harboring Sheikh Hasina. While protecting Sheikh Hasina entirely itself is not wrong, because we do have a emotional connect with Sheikh Hasina's family, with her father Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, with whom India championed the liberation of Bangladesh. We have a age-old link with Awami League. So protecting her life at a personal level was a right call, but standing diplomatically with Sheikh Hasina's government put India on the wrong side. And today the ground opinion in Bangladesh is that India favors these leaders who are authoritarian. India favors only those parties which serve Indian interests. It never works with other parties. So this is a short-sighted approach. We have seen this happen in Maldives as well, right? We have seen this happen in Nepal, in Sri Lanka. We rely on one party or one leader. When we don't work with the other parties and leaders, when they come to power, it leads to a very tense relationship. So let's see what will happen in Sri Lanka and how JVP won this election. See, JVP was actually a very minor party a few years ago, not very popular. Historically, it was very notorious because at one point it was a militant organization. Back in 60s and 70s and 80s, JVP was a notorious extremist organization. But today it has mainstreamed itself, it has entered mainstream politics. and it built the ground support. That is what you need to understand. How did JVP become popular? From being an extremist organization which had been responsible for killing thousands of people, including the Sinhalese, to transforming into a minor political party, to winning the elections and giving a president. How did this transformation happen? The answer lies in the economic crisis of Sri Lanka. As I mentioned earlier, Sri Lanka went through a major crisis from 2022. This was purely because of economic mismanagement, right? Sri Lanka was facing a similar liquidity crisis. Foreign debt had ballooned. It couldn't repay the foreign loans. Forex reserves had collapsed. Inflation had shot up. There was shortage of essential items. This was pure economic mismanagement by the previous governments, especially the Rajapaksa-led governments. Mahinda Rajapaksa, the former president from 2005 to 2015, and his brother Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who led the country from 2019 to 2022. Both were very controversial for India. They were seen as pro-China leaders, Mahinda Rajapaksa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Also, they were seen as against the interests of the Tamil community. It was Mahinda Rajapaksa and his brother Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who was the then defense minister, who launched the last phase of the civil war against the LTTE in 2006-2009. They wiped out the LTTE with brutal military force, and they are accused of committing human rights violations against the Tamil minorities. They blame India for the entire crisis. They have held positions against India. They have opposed any reforms in the interest of the Tamil community, which has been pushed by India. So we did have a problematic relationship with the Rajapaksa governments, and naturally they had aligned with China, leading to the rise of Chinese influence. Now for India, when the economic crisis hit the country because of the economic mismanagement, it was about protecting the country and protecting our own interests. Eventually, the people who were frustrated, they threw out the Rajapaksa brothers from power, and India stepped in to assist the country in line with our Sagar doctrine, security and growth for all in the region. India promises maritime and economic security and growth for all Indian Ocean countries. We stepped up and we gave almost $4 billion in economic assistance. We deferred some loan repayments. We gave fresh concessional loans. We gave some grant and assistance and supplies as well to uplift the Sri Lankan economy. We worked with Japan and other creditor nations through Paris Club to renegotiate the loan and ensure Sri Lanka gets a bailout from IMF. So India gave all this support to ensure that we remain relevant and protect our influence in the country. But meanwhile, when Sri Lanka was under a coalition national unity government to rebuild the economy and restructure the economy, the people on the ground were getting frustrated. People blamed every other party, especially the Rajapaksa brothers and their political party, as they were accused of being corrupt, as they were accused of mismanaging the economy. So with all the mainstream major parties, the people of Sri Lanka were frustrated, be it the Rajapaksa brothers or even the likes of Ranil Wickremesinghe, the former president, right, and other parties led by Premadasa and the others. All these major parties which were there, they were largely held responsible for the crisis, for the overall mismanagement, because Sri Lanka's economy has been mismanaged for 20-30 years. It's not just one leader or one government. There has been a history behind this. So people who were frustrated, who were deeply hit and affected by the crisis, they held all these major mainstream political parties and leaders responsible for the crisis. This is where JVP exploited the discontent. JVP is a left Marxist party, a communist party essentially. I'll come to its history in a short while. I'll explain the controversial history of JVP. But please understand, despite being a minor party, it built ground level support by working with the people. It channeled the anger of the Sri Lankan citizens against all politicians and built a ground level support for itself. During the crisis, JVP party members helped the people who were facing an economic crisis. People had lost jobs, tourism had almost shut down, right? The pandemic dealt a severe hit. A terror attack which happened in 2019 also disrupted the flow of tourism. So when people were struggling on the ground, JVP party members, they worked on the ground, built grassroots support. They built and turned the anger that people had against politicians and parties into a favorable support for the party. This ground level support was built in last 2 years. That is what led to the success of JVP and its leader. Now India, which has always seen Rajpaksa brothers as problematic because of their pro-China position and anti-Tamil position, right? We always had a problematic equation with the Rajpaksa governments. We relied on few other leaders like Sirisena, Vikramasinghe, Premadasa and the others. Even historically, right, India has worked with popular Sri Lankan leaders like Bandaranaike, Jayawardene and the others. But we have sidelined few parties and leaders when we don't agree with their ideology, or when we see them as against our interests, we don't work with them at all. One such party was JVP. JVP is a problematic party for India, and you will understand why. JVP, as I said, is a communist party, an extreme left party at one point. Its history goes all the way back to 1960s, when the ethnic conflict was breaking out between the Sinhala Buddhist majority and the Tamil minority. The JVP led a Marxist extreme communist movement. This party owes its origin to Maoism. Initially, it was influenced by a left-wing extremist violent ideology, that is Maoism, from China. It was closely linked with China and even North Korea. Back in 70s and 80s, when JVP committed violent atrocities in the country, it was China, North Korea which were supporting and sponsoring this extreme communist party influenced by Maoism. So clearly the party has been a threat for India. North Korea and China have sent arms and weapon shipments which were intercepted by Indian Navy. There was an incident many decades ago where a North Korean weapons carrying vessel was intercepted by the Indian Navy, and these arms smugglers had attacked the Indian Navy. So this party would get support from such hostile countries, China and North Korea. It has committed lot of atrocities. In the 70s and 80s, it led these insurrections against not just the Tamilians, but even against the Sinhalese, against the centrist right-wing parties. It has targeted them, committed lot of violations. And in these conflicts, in these political killings, 60 to 70,000 Sri Lankans have been killed by this party. So it was seen as an extremist organization at one point, right? When India-Sri Lanka peace accord was signed, and when we deployed Indian peacekeeping forces in the context of the ethnic war, the JVP was against India. India was accused of sponsoring the LTTE by many Sri Lankan parties and leaders, and JVP was one of them. Especially the pro-Sinhalese parties, they've always blamed India for the ethnic conflict, for arming and backing the Tamil militant movement. They ignore the violations the Sinhalese had committed against the Tamils, right, and blame it entirely on India. So in 1987, when the ethnic war had reached a dangerous level, India was dealing with Tamil refugees, right? We were dealing with an unstable neighbor. We were dealing with global powers interfering in the Indian Ocean. The then Rajiv Gandhi government negotiated a peace accord, Indo-Sri Lanka peace accord, to convince LTT to surrender, to end its militant war and secure rights for Tamils in return. So India's solution was a constitutional amendment known as 13th Amendment. We had convinced Sri Lanka to implement the 13th Amendment, which would devolve powers and give autonomy to the Tamil provinces, the northern and eastern provinces. According to the 13th Amendment, northern and eastern provincial councils were supposed to be created as autonomous councils with major powers devolved to the autonomous councils, because these are the Tamil populated areas, northern and eastern provinces. Though Sri Lanka implemented 13th Amendment, it only implemented it partially. Under 13th Amendment, it finally recognized the Tamil language as a as a national language. Until then, Tamil language had been undermined. It created the provincial councils. Once elections also have been held to the provincial councils, but all the powers have not been devolved, especially key subjects like land, police, law and order. They are still with the central government. The provincial councils have very limited powers. So India has been pushing for full implementation of 13th Amendment. And to implement the peace accord, to ensure LTT surrenders and the war ends, we deployed peacekeeping forces. So JVP was one of the parties which opposed this, which opposed India's involvement, which opposed the 13th Amendment and the devolution of rights and autonomy to Tamil provinces. So JVP has always stood against this, and it was even against the deployment of Indian peacekeeping forces. So there is a history of problems between India and JVP, especially in the 70s and 80s. As I said, it was a communist party aligned with Maoism, getting support from China and North Korea. It has engaged in brutal atrocities, political killings, leading to massive violence. It has often targeted Tamils as well, Sinhalese as well. But when it comes to 13th Amendment and the rights of Tamils, it has opposed it. It has stood against the Indian involvement in the ethnic conflict. So there are some red flags for India. Because see, whenever we have had such anti-India governments in Sri Lanka, we have faced many problems. When we have seen anti-India governments come up with anti-India leaders who seem to favor China or Pakistan, there has been a lot of trouble created for India. For example, look at the map here. It shows the key projects in Sri Lanka which depicts the India-China competition, the strategic competition that goes on between the two. China has executed key projects in Sri Lanka like the Colombo Port Project, Hambantota Port Project, Matala Airport and many others. Sri Lanka has even joined Belt and Road Initiative. And especially under Rajapaksa brothers, who were perceived as anti-India and pro-China, Rajapaksa brothers would award all key projects to China. Indian projects were limited to northern and eastern provinces where Tamil community is present. For example, we rebuilt the Palali Air Base, Kanke Senturai railway network, the northern railway network and Kanke Senturai port. We were interested in building the oil tank farms at Trincomalee. Right, we built the northern housing project, constructed 50,000 houses to accommodate the Tamil displaced community. So apart from some investments in northern and eastern provinces, most of the other key projects, strategic projects went to China. Now recently, India had made a comeback. India, with the help of pro-India governments, for example, in 2015, Rajapaksa lost the election and we got a friendly leader, Sirisena, who favored India and many key projects were awarded to India. Look at the map here, you're looking at the Colombo port, the transshipment terminal, which is a major port as far as global shipping is concerned. The main Colombo port was built by China. China still controls it. But new terminals were planned and East Terminal was supposed to be a critical project because a lot of global shipping passes through this. Ships that come from Africa, West Asia, Europe, going towards Southeast and East Asia, they dock at Colombo. And East Terminal, which was a critical project, had been given to India and Japan, which were implementing the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. So when we had a friendly government in 2015, Sirisena government awarded the project to India and Japan. But as soon as Rajapaksa came back to power in 2019, this time Gotabaya Rajapaksa became the president and his brother Mahinda Rajapaksa, former president, became the prime minister. Once Rajapaksa brothers were back, we saw protests against the project, local protests, which India believes to be sponsored by China and the Rajapaksa government. Following this, the project was taken away from India and Japan. The same project was awarded to China. The same project was awarded to China. Then towards Jaffna, towards the border areas, the maritime borders of India, Sri Lanka, there were clean energy projects proposed by the then Rajapaksa government, solar and wind projects. These solar and wind projects were given to a Chinese company, triggering alarm in India because involvement of Chinese companies so close to India's coastline near Tamil Nadu was seen as a security strategic threat. So Rajapaksa brothers, because of their anti-India, pro-China position, they cancelled key projects, awarded them to China and gave strategic projects to China. Then once Rajapaksa brothers were removed, following the economic crisis, and because of India's help and assistance, we again regained some influence. So to compensate for India, since we had pumped $4 billion in assistance, West Container Terminal of Colombo was awarded to Adani Ports of India. This key project has been awarded to Adani Group. This clean energy project which I was talking about, the solar wind project near the coastline of Tamil Nadu, this has been taken away from China, now given to Adani Power. So Adani has won both the projects after India gave the assistance and we had a friendly government, right? So we have won the West Container Terminal project, the clean energy project in northern Sri Lanka, and even the other projects near Trincomalee, the oil tank farm project, and at Sampur in eastern Sri Lanka we are building a thermal plant. NTPC is building a thermal power plant. These key projects have been awarded again to India when the economic crisis happened and when India helped Sri Lanka. So what I am trying to say is that whenever we see the rise of anti-India leaders, anti-India governments, we tend to lose out. Because we rely only on some leaders and some parties. Our ties are good only when they are in power. The same might happen with JVP. That is a concern. Not just because of its violent history, because of its historical anti-India, anti-Tamil position, but currently as well, its leader has publicly spoken against Indian interests. He has not only led the mass struggle, the Aragalaya struggle, where he united the masses during the economic crisis and built popular support, but he has taken a stand against Indian interests. For example, his party opposes not only the Indian involvement in the ethnic conflict and the India-Sri Lanka peace accord, his party opposes the 13th Amendment. This is the only lifeline for the Tamil minorities in northern and eastern provinces. India insists on its full implementation, but JVP is clearly against it. The leader, right, Anura Dissanayake, who's been elected, he has publicly spoken against it. The concern is that JVP doesn't support investigation into the alleged war crimes committed during the last phase of the civil war. I told you, right, Rajapaksa, when he was the president, had launched the last phase of the war between 2006 and 9, when LTT was decimated. But during this war, human rights violations were reported against the Tamil minorities. India has been pressing for investigations to secure justice to the Tamil victims. But JVP opposes those investigations into war crimes. It's opposed to the full implementation of 13th Amendment, which is crucial for securing equal rights to Tamils. And JVP opposes the projects involving Adani Group. During the election campaign, he publicly said that the projects given to Adani is part of a corrupt nexus between the Modi government and the then Sri Lankan government. He has publicly stated that Adani will be thrown out of the country from West Container Terminal and also from the clean energy projects. He has also blamed Indian fishermen for the frequent fishermen crisis, where Indian fishermen are accused of poaching in Sri Lankan waters. It is a problematic issue where India takes the blame, because it is indeed Indian fishermen who cross over into Sri Lankan waters. But he has taken a very aggressive position, promising to act against the Indian fishermen, which could increase their arrests or even their safety well-being could be threatened as Sri Lanka gets more aggressive against the Indian fishermen. So all these positions, political positions of the JVP and its leader, is something that bothers India. But this shouldn't stop India from engaging with the new government, because we have to read the situation correctly. That's what I'm saying. JVP might have a problematic history. It might have taken position against India. The current leader also might have spoken against India. But we have to understand the ground situation that masses support the JVP. Right? JVP built mass support during the economic crisis. So the current president has the popular support. It's not for us to decide who will be the leader, who will form the government. Whether we like them or not, whatever is the past, we have to keep it aside. We have to learn to work with them. Luckily, we have one example. We have done this with Maldives. You might remember Mohammad Muizu, the president of Maldives, elected last year. He also won the elections on an anti-India campaign. Right? He was seen as a pro-China leader. He created a lot of tensions in the relationship. He ordered India to take back the troops and the military equipment. His government leaders criticized the Prime Minister and Indians as well on social media, leading to a boycott of Maldives. Despite all these problems, now India has diplomatically dealt with Maldives. In the last few months, we have repaired the damage. So India has shown that farsightedness. The leadership from foreign minister to national security advisor have reached out to Maldives, and Maldives knows it needs India. It's facing an economic crisis as well. So India has promised all the support, and we have managed to win back Mohammad Muizu and maintain a basic relationship. So that is what diplomacy is about. Whether you like a party or not, whether you like their ideology or their policies, whether they were anti-India before in the past, doesn't matter. What you do now matters in diplomacy. It's about protecting your interests. We should learn to work with anyone who comes to power. Right? In the past, we have done this mistake again and again in every single country. We have relied on just one party, one leader. When they lose elections, our ties are completely gone, completely affected. So that is something we should rectify. We have learned that in Maldives and diplomatically dealt with Maldives. One should hope that we will do that with Sri Lanka, with Bangladesh, Nepal as well. So that's why I feel it's a very important topic. Now take up this prelims question. Let's see how many of you can get this right. India, Sri Lanka are part of which of the following regional groups? SAARC, BIMSTEC, IORA, Colombo Security Conclave. Let's see how many of you can answer this question. Some are saying D, some are saying B. Okay, let me give you the right answer. The correct answer is option D. 1, 2, 3, 4. India, Sri Lanka are members of all the 4 groups: SAARC, BIMSTEC, Indian Ocean Rim Association and Colombo Security Conclave. So take this as a homework, as a small assignment. Read about these 4 regional groups and mention in the comments what is their objective, who are the members. Maybe collect 3 points, 3 important points about each group and mention that in the comments, so it can help other students as well. So this would be the mains question for your answer writing practice. India must learn to deal with neighboring governments irrespective of which party heads them. Illustrate with recent examples. Now coming to the internal security section, we have 2 articles, very interesting, very important. So let's cover this. It's a small topic and then we'll head to the prelim section. There was a detailed article in the Indian Express about how global law enforcement agencies are collaborating, working together to tackle cyber crimes, especially to bring down encrypted messaging platforms which are misused by cyber criminals. See, please understand, technology, especially social media, internet-based platforms, have been easily misused by organized criminal cartels. Criminal cartels like drug trafficking cartels, arms traffickers, those involved in human trafficking, those involved in wildlife and antiquity trafficking, those involved in cyber crimes, online frauds and cyber scams. All these criminal cartels, right, which function as an organized criminal network, they are closely linked with money laundering and even terrorist financing. There exists a direct link between organized criminal activities like drug, arms, human trafficking, cyber crimes, and money laundering and terror financing. So it's very, very essential to tackle organized crime, especially new age crimes like cyber crimes committed using new technology based platforms. So around the world, cyber crimes have become a menace. The kind of cyber attacks which are happening today is alarming. From stealing your identity to placing you under a virtual arrest, a cyber arrest, and extorting money, to even threatening and extorting money from the victims, to stealing from your credit cards and bank accounts, right? Cyber crimes have become extremely dangerous, posing a threat to security. There is a link between the non-state cyber criminal cartels and the state cyber agencies as well, which engage in cyber espionage and cyber warfare. So this poses a new threat, a new form of hybrid threat. Traditionally, wars, conflicts, security threats were limited to the traditional domains like land, air and sea, right? This is where we dealt with physical threats, but today we are in the virtual world. A 5th dimension has opened up. The 4th dimension of warfare would be space, outer space, when the space race began during Cold War. But now we are looking at the 5th dimension of warfare, which is waged virtually, online. So there are no boundaries here. It's hard to identify who the attackers are, where the attack is originating from. It's easy to become anonymous. in the cyber world. You can conceal your identity, your location, right? State actors could sponsor non-state actors to launch cyber attacks and cyber wars. Countries can be crippled without even firing a single bullet, right? So tackling these crimes becomes very, very essential, and especially encrypted messaging services have become a menace. So the article focused on this topic. And recently in the mains exam, UPSC had asked a question on encrypted messaging services. How such services are misused by organized criminals to enable criminal activities which poses a security threat. So let's look at this question and then we will discuss the topic. Which of the following social media apps offer encrypted messaging services? Telegram, WhatsApp. I'm sure all of you use these popular social media platforms. And I have also listed Ghost and EncroChat. Now, can you tell me which of these social media apps, they're all messaging services essentially, which of them provide end-to-end encryption? That is the question. Some students are saying B, some are saying D. Okay, the correct answer is option D, all the four. Telegram, WhatsApp, I'm sure you would have noticed. When you open these apps, you can clearly see that there is end-to-end encryption. Ghost and EncroChat, they are notorious apps used by criminals as they provide safe encrypted communication. Telegram, WhatsApp also have been misused by criminal organizations and terrorist groups. For example, ISIS, Islamic State, was notorious for using Telegram. Even now, there are ISIS modules using Telegram because of its end-to-end encryption. That's why many countries are acting against Telegram, right? Recently, the founder of Telegram was arrested in France. Many criminal organizations involved in drug trafficking, arms trafficking, in circulating child pornography. All such criminal cartels operate on Telegram, WhatsApp as well, but they use even more sophisticated encrypting messaging services like Ghost and EncroChat. So let's understand how countries are tackling this menace. Recently, there was a report that Europol, the European law enforcement coordination platform, which brings European law enforcement agencies together, just like you have Interpol, which creates a coordinating platform for all the global law enforcement agencies, there is Europol for European Union countries. Europol coordinated with FBI and the national law enforcement agencies of several countries to take down cyber criminals by targeting encrypted messaging platforms like Ghost. See, today most law enforcement and intelligence agencies, they have built the ability to infiltrate into Telegram and WhatsApp. By bringing strict rules and regulations and by building their surveillance capabilities and by forcing the companies to abide by the law, they are able to get hold of information from Telegram and WhatsApp, right? If required, they can infiltrate the apps as well. At least Western governments and agencies can do that. And they can even force the companies to give the information during an investigation. But sometimes these companies are accused of not cooperating with them. So criminals are wary of Telegram and WhatsApp because they are more commercial in nature. Since majority of the subscribers are civilians, there are chances that criminals may not get complete encryption. If governments insist and push the companies, they'll be forced to reveal the sensitive information as well. So criminals today have stopped using Telegram and WhatsApp. They have moved to other encrypted platforms like Ghost, Discord, and EncroChat and many others, right? So UPSC had asked a question based on this. In the recently concluded mains exam, this question was asked. Social media and encrypting messaging services pose a serious security challenge. This was your question. So let's see how Europol and FBI have tackled some of the encrypted messaging services and what India is also doing to tackle cyber crimes at a global level, right? So there was this messaging service called EncroChat, which I was mentioning. So European law enforcement and Europol, they faced a big challenge in tackling the crimes that were being facilitated through these platforms. Especially the Ghost app, it granted anonymity, complete anonymity, which criminals would easily enjoy, right? It would not only hide their identity, location, the messages would get deleted. It would not store any record of the messages or the transactions. And servers were located in different countries to prevent any intelligence law enforcement agency from hacking into the servers. So thus, Ghost became a very popular platform amongst organized criminals, from drug traffickers to arms traffickers to human traffickers. So this app was easily misused for enabling cyber crimes and even real world physical crimes. So European agencies through Europol and FBI have cracked down on this network. The founders, right, they have been arrested. The cyber criminals who are misusing the platform have been arrested. The investment and the funds have been frozen. Through this coordinated action, right, Ghost has been brought down by law enforcement agencies. It was one of the most popular apps used by the criminal organizations. So you need global effort. Without global coordinated effort, you can't tackle transnational organized crimes, such as cyber crimes. In the past as well, we have many examples like this. EncroChat was one such notorious messaging app, which was trusted by criminals, and it was called as the WhatsApp for gangsters, right? As it would grant anonymity and secrecy, delete all the records. It was seen as the most preferred platform for criminals to communicate. But European agencies launched a project called Project Emma a few years ago. They infiltrated the networks through a well-planned operation and took down the criminals. What they did is very interesting. They planted a malware in the app itself. The law enforcement and intelligence agencies, they hacked into the servers of this company, planted a malware, and they rolled out a new version of EncroChat, which criminals started downloading and using. This malware was designed to remotely monitor, to carry out surveillance, to record all messages, record the passwords and all the transactions, giving vital evidence to investigators that led to thousands of arrests around the world. Several criminal cartels were brought down. We saw something similar by the FBI. The FBI went to the next level. There was a popular encrypted messaging platform based in Canada which had been shut down. So criminals were looking for a new app to communicate. This was back in 2018. You know what FBI did? They released a smartphone into the market, spread the popularity of this phone within the criminal world, stating that this has the most secure encryption. Criminals didn't know that the phones were developed and released by the FBI itself. FBI was working with an informant, and they used these old Android phones, stripped them of all the basic features, calling, messaging features, camera, games, everything was disabled. The phone would only be like a messenger. It would only run a basic encrypted messaging app hidden behind the calculator. This was designed by the FBI itself and released it into the dark web, into the criminal underbelly, and the word spread amongst criminals that this is a great device called, it was popularly called Enorm, right, within the criminal world. They didn't know that, they had no clue that FBI itself had released them. So FBI was monitoring everything. Once criminals started using the device and the platform, right, they had no clue that it was a FBI operation. They got hold of all the evidence, and across countries, multiple raids were conducted to bring down these criminals. So this was an encrypted app and a device created by FBI to trap the criminals. In another operation, Sky ECC, which was another notorious encrypted app used by criminals, similar global coordination helped in tracking those criminals and getting hold of the messages, which helped in arresting several criminals around the world. This also required global coordination. The law enforcement of France, Dutch, then Belgium, right? They all worked together with US and other countries, even Australia, New Zealand. And together, they managed to carry out surveillance, pick up intelligence on these criminals, and it led to the arrest of several criminals, which brought down these cartels. Now, India also has stepped up its fight against cyber crimes. The CBI, the law enforcement agency which works with Interpol as well, has been conducting a series of operations under Operation Chakra. In the last 2-3 years, it has conducted 2 versions of the operation, and recently, just last week, it carried out Operation Chakra 3 in coordination with FBI and other global law enforcement agencies. Through this operation, spanning multiple countries, we have brought down a criminal cartel in India engaging in cyber crimes. These cartels are disguised as IT companies or call centers. But in reality, what they do is they scam people. They would mainly target American and European victims, call them and get in touch with them saying that their systems have been hacked, that they will help them to recover the device, and they would steal their passwords and eventually commit data theft and financial theft. So FBI was pursuing the case. It realized the cartel is operating from India, worked with CBI, and CBI mounted this operation, Chakra 3, and these cyber criminals have been taken down. So what you understand from this is that to tackle cyber crimes and the new age crimes happening through new technology, you need global coordination because these are transnational crimes. Now coming to a similar security threat which has come up. Indians are trapped in Cambodia and Southeast Asia as cyber slaves, thousands and thousands of them. Indian youth who have basic education or even those who have very high skills and high qualification, they have been trapped in Cambodia and across Southeast Asia. They have been lured with fake job promises and they are pushed into these cyber cartels, criminal cartels in Cambodia and Southeast Asia, forced to commit cyber crimes and cyber frauds. So many of the fake WhatsApp, Telegram calls and messages you get that you can invest in a crypto scheme to double your money or to take up a data entry job where you can earn a lot of rupees, right? All these are scams and frauds which all of you have experienced, right? If you have, please let me know in the comments. Most of the calls that you get, if you speak to the person, they sound Indian, they speak an Indian language, usually Hindi, right? But trust me, most of the calls, messages are originating from Southeast Asia, from Myanmar to Laos to Cambodia. How is it possible? Because Indians have been trapped. They have been forcefully duped and taken to these countries to work for these criminal cartels to commit cyber frauds on behalf of the criminal mafias operating in Southeast Asia. So take up this question. The Golden Triangle region that borders India is seen as a hub of what kind of criminal activities? There is a region called Golden Triangle. So can you tell me what type of criminal activities do you come across in the Golden Triangle? Drug trafficking, arms trafficking, human trafficking, cyber crimes. Most are saying D, some are saying B and C as well. The correct answer is D. All four criminal activities are seen in Golden Triangle. See, this map clearly shows you the Golden Triangle region stretching across Myanmar, Thailand, Laos and even Cambodia. These countries in Southeast Asia have always been hubs of drug production, drug trafficking, even arms trafficking, human trafficking, and as well as cyber crimes and cyber frauds. This has always been a threat for us because we share a direct border with the Golden Triangle through Myanmar. Northeast insurgents have easily infiltrated into the region. They have secured drug supplies and arms supplies, which has funded their insurgencies and acts of terrorism against India. So India has always been vulnerable to the impact coming from Golden Triangle region. There is large-scale human trafficking where especially children, women are kidnapped and smuggled and sold, pushed into prostitution and child pornography as well. This remains a huge menace, all these criminal activities, and now cyber crimes, online frauds, gambling scams have become a rage across the Golden Triangle. There are these big facilities that have been set up by the criminal mafias, and according to intelligence reports, it's largely controlled by Chinese mafias. It's all owned by Chinese mafias operating in this region. They have set up these huge facilities, almost like a huge resort or a massive farm, right? And what they do is they dupe the youth from around the world, especially from countries like India, Philippines, Pakistan, Bangladesh, where people are desperate for jobs. They know that in these countries, getting a job is a big challenge for someone who doesn't have good education or good skills. So they start reaching out to them through these middlemen, these agents who promise them lucrative jobs abroad. Or they run social media campaigns. They run ads on social media, and many gullible youth fall prey to this. They look on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, WhatsApp. They keep getting these ads that there are high-paying jobs abroad. This is how Indian youth were tricked to join the Russian army. Through YouTube influencers and YouTube ads, the middlemen sitting in West Asia and India They duped and tricked hundreds of Indian youth, promising a job in Russia and pushing them into the Russian army, and few Indians got killed. Now we are struggling to bring them back. Something similar is happening in Golden Triangle in the last 2 years. According to reports, anywhere between 15,000 to 30,000 Indian youth are trapped. They are promised these jobs through these fake agents and middlemen or through social media apps and advertisements, saying there's a lucrative job in Thailand, in Vietnam, because it's more believable. Because there are IT tech companies in Vietnam, in Thailand as well. Even well-educated youth, software engineers, they have fallen prey to this. Because see, Indians have a fascination of working abroad. There is an aspiration attached to it. So when there is a good salary in a foreign location, people take it up, and especially those without high education, high skills, they easily fall prey to this. So they are given these fake job offers, visas are made, they land in Thailand or Vietnam, right, thinking they are going to start a new life. But once they land in Thailand or Vietnam, they are kidnapped. The mafia will kidnap them, take them to the jungles of Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia, where these massive scam centers are run by Chinese mafias. They are forced to work for the organized criminal cartels. They are beaten, not given food, salaries are not paid, and passports are snatched away. They can't escape. They have to work if they have to survive. So in this scam, thousands of Indians are stuck, and India is struggling to get them back. So this remains a major threat for us. It's threatening the Indian workers abroad, the migrant workers. It's threatening our security as well, because these criminal cartels could be linked with drug and arms traffickers and human traffickers, which poses a threat to the northeast of India. So according to a report, close to 30,000 Indians might be trapped. The data shows, the immigration data shows, more than 70,000 Indians went on a visitor visa. They are often taken on visitor visas to avoid suspicion. More than 70,000 Indians entered these countries, and very few of them have come back. If you look at the data, the difference is around 29 to 30,000. That's how the government and the investigators have arrived at a number that close to 30,000 Indians might be trapped. So we are rescuing some of them. The Indian embassy is working in Cambodia, and the Indian missions across the region are working actively to try and identify the Indian youth who are trapped and trying to bring them back. The most affected states are Punjab, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu and others, where the youth are jobless, they are looking for better opportunities abroad, right, and they easily fall prey to this. So this is a concern, a security threat, and India has been trying to deal with this. The NIA has taken up the investigation. We have cracked down on some of the fake agents who are operating in India, duping the Indian youth. So they have been booked under very serious offences, including terrorism related offences. So that is something you need to watch out for. So please take up this practice question. The growing menace of human trafficking and cybercrime cartels in Golden Triangle has emerged as a major threat for India. Now we come to the last part, very small topics just for your prelims. I would like to include a few places that are in news. There can be a map based question. So let's take a quick look. The proposed NEOM megacity project is coming up in which country? Can you first answer the question, then I'll show you where is NEOM located. Why is NEOM important? Does anyone know the answer? This ambitious mega city, it's a proposed new city which is coming up in some country. So you should tell me which country is it? Singapore, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Indonesia. What's the right answer? Some are saying D, B. Okay. The correct answer is option C, Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has proposed a new mega city. It borders the Gulf of Aqaba and the Red Sea. In this region of Saudi Arabia, a new mega city has been proposed as a futuristic city. A city that will employ all futuristic technologies, including AI, facial recognition, etc., to build a tech and economic hub. But this project has attracted a lot of controversy on environmental grounds, also on social grounds, because this project will lead to displacement of the indigenous communities present over here. In the Wadi areas, in the desert areas over here, there are indigenous communities, the Bedouin communities from Israel and Jordan. There are other indigenous tribes present. They will be displaced by the project. There are environmental concerns because in Red Sea over here, there are coral reefs which could get damaged because of increased pollution, right? Plus, there are concerns about the technology being deployed to build the city, which leads to concern about data privacy, because the proposed plan talks about usage of technology for monitoring everything from mobile conversation to facial recognition, right? Large scale surveillance is being implemented in the name of economic initiatives and opportunities. So thus the project has become very controversial. So you should know where this project is coming up. Now some of you might think, how is this relevant for IR? Let me tell you why. This is part of Saudi's changing strategy. Saudi Arabia knows the importance of oil is ending. Till now, Saudi dominated the region and even global geopolitics and the oil markets because of its control over oil and oil prices. But since the world is moving away from fossil fuels, Saudi is making a shift. It's trying to preempt the loss of its influence. If the world moves away from oil in another 40-50 years, that will erode Saudi's influence, right? So it's making arrangements, right, so that for the next few decades, Saudi Arabia can shift towards technology, high-end technology, to reduce dependency on oil. It's looking to diversify its economy. So this shows the far-sightedness of the Saudi regime and how they are planning to move away from oil dependency and yet control the economy and the global geopolitics, at least West Asian geopolitics. So that's why Neom city is very important. Next, the port of Bandar Abbas was in news. Can you answer this question? The Bandar Abbas port is closest to which strategic water body? Is it close to Red Sea or Persian Gulf or Hormuz Strait or Gulf of Oman? What's the right answer? I'm sure many of you would have heard about the port. You know in which country it is located. But can you tell me it's closest to which of these four options? C, A, D. See, to answer such questions, you need a good map reading skill. You should be good in geography. Let me give you the answer by showing you the map. The Bandar Abbas port is of course in Iran, that I'm sure most of you would have guessed correctly. It's very close to the Chabahar port, built and operated by India over here. So amongst the given options, see, this is Persian Gulf, this is Gulf of Oman, Red Sea of course is very far away. The closest would be the Hormuz Strait, which is a critical choke point. Bandar Abbas faces the Hormuz Strait. It sits right at the opening of Hormuz, which connects Persian Gulf with Gulf of Oman. So right answer would be the Strait of Hormuz. Option C is correct. Why was it in news? It was in news because Indian Navy has carried out a visit to Bandar Abbas port as part of our defense maritime relations. In fact, Iranian Navy participates in multilateral naval exercises like Milan, which is organized by Indian Navy, right? As part of Sagar Doctrine, India reaches out to all the Indian Ocean countries to build maritime security relations. So Indian naval vessels, as part of the security cooperation with Iran, have visited the strategic Bandar Abbas port. So this was a press release on PIB from Defense Ministry. Coming to another small article, the Chanakya Defense Dialogue was in the news, again on PIB's website. So I'm helping you to cover even PIB articles. So can you answer this question? Chanakya Defense Dialogue seen in news is organized by which organization? Is it organized by ORF and External Affairs Ministry, National Security Council or IB, or Indian Army and Center for Land Warfare Studies? Which organization conducts this event, the Chanakya Defense Dialogue, which has been gaining prominence in India? It's a conclave, it's a symposium that brings all experts together, serving officers together, right? So what do you think is the right answer? Most are saying D. Very good. D is indeed the correct answer. It's organized by Indian Army and Center for Land and Warfare Studies. So Center for Land and Warfare Studies is a think tank, CLOS. It's a defense think tank based out of India, partly funded by the government as well. And Indian Army together have launched the Chanakya Defense Dialogue, which is going to be a regular event that will bring top experts, military experts and strategic experts together to discuss the security challenges that face India, to look at the new technologies that can be incorporated into our military, to look at the emerging threats and how to counter them, right? So that's why Chanakya Defense Dialogue can be important. Now coming to the last topic. India, Kazakhstan have conducted their joint military exercise. Again, it was reported on the PIB. There is no need for a question. It's a straightforward topic. So the name of the joint military exercise is KazInd. By looking at the name itself, you can deduce which country is part of it. Obviously, India, Kazakhstan. So this is a regular joint military exercise between our armies. We have been conducting this from several years. Focus is mainly on counter-terrorism, because even Central Asia is affected by radicalism and terrorism, which is a common threat. Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan are concerned about the AFPAC region, which is a hotbed of extremist terrorist activities. Just like it affects India, it affects Kazakhstan and Central Asia as well. So we work very closely through groupings like SCO. We work together under the India Central Asia Summit, and bilaterally we have a joint army exercise called KazInd, which abides by the UN Charter, where India works with Kazakhstan to counter terrorism, to build the joint capabilities, to develop interoperability if required, right? So we can conduct joint operations, we can learn from each other. So that is the purpose of the exercise, and this could be important for your exams. So on this note, I would bring my discussion to an end. Now, before we wrap up the session, if you have any questions, any doubts, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to answer a few. And after that, we can close the session. In the meanwhile, if you guys have liked the session and understood all the topics and benefited from them, do let me know in the comments. Do press the like button, right? And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And also please note that if you found the UCAN initiative to be useful, you can enroll for the entire program, a year-long current affairs program, a comprehensive program, where we take 15 sessions in a month, subject-based current affairs coverage by our subject experts, along with all these practice questions and coverage from multiple sources, Hindu, Indian Express, all the important magazines, Yojana, Kurukshetra, Down to Earth, Frontline, Diplomat, and even the PIB. So if you want to simplify your current affairs preparation, then UCAN is the best solution. So if interested, you can enroll by clicking on the link provided in the video description. Kanishak is asking, what was the main trigger event for TTP to attack Pakistan? See, TTP is ideologically opposed to any state. TTP wants to topple the Pakistani state and establish its religious doctrine. It wants to establish the Islamic State and enforce the strict religious code. So that's what leads TTP to attack Pakistan. But if you want to know what is the immediate trigger which led TTP to target Pakistan, the answer is somewhere found in early 2000. When Pakistan worked with US to topple the Taliban regime, some factions of Taliban, they were angry with Pakistan, that Pakistan helped Western countries to target their brother organization. So that was one immediate trigger. Chandrashil is asking, what would be the schedule of these classes? These classes would be Tuesday to Friday, 9:30 to 11:30 p.m. It will be conducted on the Unacademy platform, on the app. Just 1 or 2 sessions will be conducted on YouTube, so that we can help all the students as a free of cost initiative. But if you want to enroll for the full program, to attend all the 15 classes in a month and ensure you have complete coverage of current affairs for the whole year, right? Then you can enroll for the program, and those classes will happen on the Unacademy app. So just click on the link in the description, you will get to know all the details. Shri is asking, Center for Land Warfare, explain please. Center for Land Warfare Studies is a think tank comprising of experts and researchers based out of New Delhi. It conducts research in the field of security studies, warfare studies, etc. It works closely with Defense Ministry and Indian Army. Roger is asking, Durand Line dispute, sir. Durand Line dispute is a long-standing dispute between Pakistan and Afghanistan. The AFPAC border is called the Durand Line, named after the Durand Commission, which was drawn during the British era. But the Pashtuns who are found here, right, they don't respect the Durand Line. They don't look at Durand Line as the international border, because it basically divided the Pashtun community. Pashtuns were split into Afghanistan and Pakistan. So they don't recognize the Durand Line, and since Pashtuns are dominant in Afghan politics, even in the Taliban, they don't see the Durand Line as the border. So that is the origin of the Pak-Af border dispute. All right. So guys, these were the questions. I hope you guys have enjoyed the session and benefited from the session. So as I said, if you liked it, do support us with your likes and comments. Do share the videos with other aspirants. It might be helpful to them. That is it. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.